you're very, very welcome. And I really think this church has a special bunch of people who I believe God will use to do mighty things in this place of Malta. So I just want to thank you guys for just making me feel welcome. And thank you to Pastor Dino. Love that guy. Yeah, my testimony. I believe it's always important to put your kids in Sunday school, because I just do believe there's something embedded in a child when you send them to Sunday school that never ever leaves them. And I used to go to Sunday school, so I always grew up with a belief that God existed, but I didn't have no relationship with Jesus, and I never really understood it. So yeah, I came out of Sunday school and just lived my life in the world as we do. But I was involved heavily in the music scene in the UK. So full time I did music. I played in clubs around the UK, around Europe and America, and for 5 years, pretty much I lived a rock and roll life. It really was rock and roll, you name it, I did it. And I just lived life. I really did. I lived life. But as time went on, it was really weird because back in the year 2000, because I got saved in 2006, but back in the year 2000, I was in Cyprus. And that time I was in Cyprus, it was really at the height of that particular scene. See, I was involved in a music called UK Garage, and at that particular time in the year 2000, it was at its peak in the UK, and we was all sat on the beach in Cyprus. And I remember all the guys, we were just so excited about music, and we was just so excited about where this music scene was at. But I remember a small voice just saying to me, this is not going to last forever. And I remember actually being in agreement with it, saying, yeah, I know. And by about the year 2002, what had happened is the whole bubble had burst within that music scene. So effectively, I went to having 6 jobs in a weekend, it was 6 bookings in a weekend, to having 6 in a month. And it just really got to a point, all the things that I had security in, whether it was women, whether it was drugs, or whether it was money, slowly each and every one of those things started to be taken away from me, and by the year 2000, I was pretty much, I didn't have anything. There wasn't really much going on in music for me. And by the year 2003, it really reached a point where I had to go back to my day job, which was really a hard thing for me to do. So I really had nothing. So all those things I had security in were effectively just taken away from me. I had nothing, and I had to go back to work. But it's really strange, because sometimes, looking back on it, I believe that sometimes God has to strip certain things away from our lives in order to get our attention. And the funny thing is, all through the period up to the time I became a Christian, even before I did the music thing full time, there was periods in my life where I was searching for God. I used to go to Bible studies with the Jehovah's Witnesses for a little while. But I think at that time, even though I was searching, I kind of went. I was one of those guys, even though I went and I was searching, I was still very skeptical with them. So I was kind of asking questions about the Bible just to trip them up. So questions like, if Cain, Cain was banished and he went to another land and he had a family, the Bible only, those sort of questions when you ask just to try and trip people up about the Bible. But in those times I was still searching. So I went back to work in 2003, and I met a lady, ironically, which was Sarah, who began to witness to me about God. And we just used to have conversations about God. And she wasn't judgmental of me, she wasn't judgmental of my lifestyle or anything, but we used to just have conversations about God. And one day someone invited me to church, and I was still involved in music, because even though I was working full time, I was still doing some jobs on the weekend. So in a lot of ways I was still doing the same old things on the weekends and stuff, but it just wasn't full time and it wasn't so full on anymore. But someone invited me to church. There's a series of conversations, and someone invited me to church, and I went to church one Sunday. And it was quite ironic, because the guy invited me to church didn't actually turn up to the church. I was supposed to meet him at a tube station in London, and he didn't actually turn up. So I phoned him and he said, look, I can't make it. So I said to him, just tell me where the church is now, because I'm here now, so I might as well go. So I went to the church. They gave an altar call for the sinner's prayer, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't understand anything about what a sinner's prayer was. I didn't understand anything about the gospel. Someone who was sitting next to me just challenged me to go up to the front, and I went. I said the sinner's prayer. I didn't understand a thing about it, and when I left the church, I was kind of like, yeah, I suppose everything will be alright, and I went to IB for a week later. But it was really funny, because even though I was in Ibiza, and I was living in sin, and I was just having a mad time in Ibiza, something started to happen. And I noticed that I was a hardcore smoker in those days. I smoked weed and everything, but it was really weird, because when people would pass me joints out there, I'd be sitting there with a joint for about 10 or 15 minutes, and they were like, are you going to actually smoke that? And I was like, I'll just give it back to you. But I never really thought about it. I think at the time I just thought, I just don't feel to smoke at the time. And when I got back from my Ibiza, I remember I used to keep this tin, this Quality Street tin, and I used to have all my tools in there, so to speak. All the things I used to smoke with and stuff. And I remember I kind of had 2 joints left in there, and I remember smoking them and saying to myself, yeah, I've kind of made this decision to follow Christ now, so I'm going to smoke these 2 joints, and that's the end of it. And it was really weird, because after I smoked those 2 joints, it was like the appetite just went away. And I hadn't actually made a conscious decision to follow Christ. Even when I went to church that day, when somebody invited me, and I went for the sinner's prayer, I didn't actually make a conscious decision to follow Christ. I just said, yeah, I suppose everything's going to be alright. I went to Ibiza, and didn't even give it a second thought. But that appetite to smoke actually went away. And then I found that a week later, I went back to the same church, and they gave another altar call. And I went up again, and I said the sinner's prayer, and I understood a little bit more about it. I didn't quite understand what the gospel was about, but I said the sinner's prayer again, and it was really weird, because before I knew it, I found myself praying, and I found myself reading the Bible. Now, I didn't know any words to pray, but God gave me the words to pray, which was, I just found it amazing. And I was just reading the Bible, and it just, I understood it. Every opportunity I had, I just kept reading the Bible. Every opportunity I had, I was just always in prayer. Even though I didn't really understand the gospel at that time, I was just still very new in the faith. God really gave me an appetite for His word, and He gave me a desire to pray, which was really crazy. That time I was still involved in music, but and I was still playing in clubs and stuff like that, but I just lost the appetite, the desire to actually go into clubs and actually do what I was doing before. And for